the Congress party itself was not really engaged with this. While the diaspora was growing, it was getting richer, it was getting prosperous, they're more interested in India, there were more money coming from there, but it was not part of the Congress political agenda, political platform.
So in this week's Rajamandala, you've taken a very interesting topic. Rahul Gandhi is about to visit New York, probably lecture at some universities as he's been doing. And then soon after, the Prime Minister is going to be in Washington for his state level visit with President Biden at the White House. How do you see, there's a lot of interesting things, but how there's a lot of politicization with the diaspora, and we'll get to that. But how do you see the Congress's outreach to the diaspora? Because as you point out in the article, perhaps with the exception of Rajiv Gandhi, in the last 20, 30 years even, they haven't been as the BJP has been, with this sort of engagement with the Pravasi. So how do you see this Rahul Gandhi, this is not his first visit abroad, changing or evolving, or what's going on?
I think, as we mentioned in the piece, the Congress has a long tradition. I mean, going back to the independence struggle, trying to reach out to the Indian communities abroad. After all, Mahatma Gandhi was in South Africa raising the question of Indians there. Subhash Chandra Bose was in Malaya mobilizing support for Indian, liberating India from the British colonialism. You had there were other groups. I mean, the India League in London, which was set up, which Krishna Menon and a whole lot of others. Then you had a lot of revolutionaries who were coming together in Berlin. It was called the Berlin Committee. So the left parties, the socialist parties, I mean, there was this massive sense of internationalism in the run-up to the independence, and the Indians abroad were very much involved in the India struggle for independence. So they played, they really were mobilizing support. But I think the Congress, slowly but certainly, once it acquired state power, did not see much value in this relationship. That is one part. The second part is interesting. We don't talk too much about this. When Nehru had to face the question, because there were all these diasporas in Southeast Asia, for example, when Nehru went to the Bandung conference, there was a lot of worry in the region that India and China would use their diasporas to meddle in their domestic politics. So both Nehru and Chavanlai both said, no, we're not going to meddle with your politics. The diaspora should be loyal to their own state. Wherever they are, they should be loyal to their governments. And so only relationship we maintain is a mere cultural relationship. So by that position took away the imperative for serious political engagement, which the Congress party lost. And Rajiv Gandhi, like so many things in India's foreign policy, a lot of things, interesting things started under him. So he tried to reach out to deal with the problems in Washington that we were facing at the time. There was a lot of anti-India stuff going on in the US, so he really thought the Indian communities could help it. And there was a little some follow-up under Narasimha Rao. And it was really Vajpayee who, and the BJP, that turned the argument. You remember, you won't remember, when I was young, it was said that, look, anybody who goes abroad was betraying the country. Look at these doctors, we pay for their education, they're going abroad. This is brain drain, this is bad. Let's ban it. And so those are the kind of ideas in the 60s and the 70s. And the Congress was very much part of it. And what happened with the BJP under Vajpayee was, look, these are children of Mother India. They're doing very well. So let's own them. It's not treating them as if they're some kind of betrayers of the nation, to actually thinking of them as assets to India. And one, we were getting increasingly proud of the achievements of the diaspora. On the other hand, the BJP under Vajpayee saw it's a great value of reconnecting with the diaspora in big ways. So the Pravasi Bharati Divas really started under Vajpayee in 2003. The Congress under the UPA government, they didn't have really a political appreciation of it. I mean, what they did was really every year there were PBDs. It was very bureaucratized. The Ministry of External Affairs would do something. The Congress party itself was not really engaged with this. While the diaspora was growing, it was getting richer, it was getting prosperous. They're more interested in India. There were more money coming from there. but it was not part of the Congress political agenda, political platform. But part of the problem was Congress itself had so weakened as a political organization, and out of intellectually thinking big ideas. So the UPA, when UPA ended and Mr. Modi came to power, I mean, he took it upon himself to really elevate the diaspora to an extraordinarily high level. Starting from his first visit to the US, which was, the Madison Square Garden. And later he went to UAE, where he spoke at a large public meeting of Indian workers in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Then he spoke in Australia. So I think Modi and the BJP saw the value of engaging the diaspora. And it was not a one-way street. In fact, India started doing a lot more things for the diaspora. If you remember, Sushma Swaraj, the first foreign minister, I mean, anybody could send her a tweet saying, look, I've lost my passport. Please tell the embassy to help me. So I think she forced a change in the embassy's attitude, which was, look, who are these guys? They come around, they bother us with all their personal problems, to one of saying, no, we're going to stand by Indians abroad. And then this whole evacuation operations, pulling out Indians at the expense of the government of India, wherever they are, we'll bring them back home. So I think there was a strategic appreciation of the diaspora under Mr. Modi, and I think we've seen that dramatically grow. So what I think, coming to the Rahul Gandhi's visit, this is really the first probably serious effort. Though he went to London and spoke to Indian communities, I believe he's organizing a rally in New York. We don't know how big or how successful it's going to be. It's being advertised, I believe, in the US. So this is, in a sense, Congress is waking up to a missed opportunity.
The second part you touch on the piece, which is interesting, and is that the diaspora itself is now much more politically engaged with India. One is what we're doing, and this can, so part of it. And so one is, of course, as Indian politics and our fault lines from South Asia being exported, and as well as the way their fault lines because now there's so many Indians in leadership positions in Western, in English-speaking countries' politics. Could you expand on that a little, the kinds of contradictions, or not contradictions perhaps, but various themes that are emerging from that kind of deepening of India there?
I think there are two parts to the politicization that you talked about. One is in the English-speaking world, which is far more open to immigrants and their participation in the society. Indians have actively taken to politics in the Indian diaspora. Kamala Harris and, Vice President in the US. You have Rishi Sunak, who is Prime Minister of Britain. They're only one example, but if you look at the US Congress, US state assemblies, they're also the state congresses, the local bodies, across this, Canada, for example, in cabinet, and there's any given point of time, there are 3-4 Sikh ministers. So I think the presence, so they're political today. They're not just, immigrants trying to save money and send the money home. They're part of their societies. They're actively engaged with the politics of their own host countries. So that's one part. Second part is that in the past, if you remember, the Indian diaspora, what did they do? I mean, my village needs a school. Yeah. I must do something. I studied in IIT, therefore let me give something in return. So it was more of a personal gratitude and personal sense of duty to India that we saw. But today, it's an active diaspora. It's not a passive, sentimental diaspora. They're engaged with the domestic political issues. If something happens in India, the interested communities not only, join in this. We saw in the farmers' agitation. The Sikhs from Britain and UK and Canada and various places became part of the story.
Yeah.
And if something happens, a communal question, a riot in India, a communal outrage, you have communities in the US and other places taking it up with their political classes. Saying, look, this is what is, in the past, it used to be the Indian communities would support Indian foreign policy objectives. Yeah. Okay, India wanted a nuclear deal, so they would go to the US congressman and say, guys, India is great, you must take a positive view of India. Today, they go into their own politicians and saying so-and-so happening in India is not good from that particular community or section's point of view. So that is the new thing that has happened. So I think what we have is really then an interpenetration of politics because the size of diaspora is large. And it might not be equal to the size of India, but it's sufficiently large to generate a discourse within the host countries, mainly in the Western English-speaking democracies, that gets picked up and carried on. So I think we are in a very different phase, and managing this would be a major challenge, not only for the Indian state, but also for the Americans, for the other states who are engaging India. But then there, as we said, look, it's retail politics. It's like mobilization. Like if there's one community in UK with sufficient number of votes in say 5 constituencies, the political leaders will go to them, and these guys will say, look at what's happening in India. Please take it up. So whether the guy understands it or not, I mean, they start commenting in the parliament what's happening in India. So I think you have actually, and then India will react saying, who the hell are these guys to talk about our domestic politics? And then we're also talking about their domestic politics. For example, something happens to Indian temples, Prime Minister Modi is taking it up. So I think there is this new element of interpenetration of our domestic politics between the India and the English-speaking world. And the other thing, I mean, I just wanted to add, there's only one part, but the larger questions. For example, California recently passed a bill on the caste question, on caste discrimination. So this thing about, after all, the diaspora, is not immune from India. I mean, they take all the values, problems, difficulties that we have here. So every single division within India gets reflected,
right? Yeah.
In the home countries. For example, if the IITs have a caste problem, it is now reflected in Silicon Valley. So I think this again a new thing. And I think how we deal with it is going to be quite interesting.
So a final quick question, which is, everyone read the piece. It's on the indianexpress.com, of course, and probably wherever you're watching this video, you should have a link. So there's one interesting, it was almost an aside in the piece, is that earlier, whether it's the freedom movement, whether it's the socialists and communists, there is an ideological sense to internationalism. One of the things driving it is internationalism. Do you see because BJP is an ideological party, apart from this sort of Indians being one people, like an almost Israeli idea of Indianness, I mean, a sense of Indians anywhere are Indians. Apart from that, do you see any other kind of underpinning to their outreach, which is considerable resource and organization behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I would put it like this. I mean, what you had the internationalist spirit, whether it was liberal or left or animated the Indian nationalists of all political hues. The BJP was a nativist party, which was really inward-oriented party, and did not have an international connection in a way that, say, the communist parties had, or the Congress parties had, or socialist parties, for example. They had deep ties to the European socialists for a long time. But all of those have atrophied, of course. Yeah. So once the diaspora came to the fore, I think for the BJP, it has given them a vehicle for becoming a global party. I mean, I don't know if you noticed in the last year, I mean, the BJP is reaching out to the embassies. It's trying to connect with the rest of the world. And over the last years, there's been engagement with China. There's been engagement with a whole lot of countries. So now, as a leading political, probably one of the biggest parties in the world, that it is now beginning to connect with the world. And then I think it is the Indian nationalism is the primary theme, and how that plays out on the ground is the problem is that once the internal divisions begin to come up. Yeah. So I think that's where the problem for the BJP, because India is polarized.
Yeah.
While it has done a very successful mobilization of the diaspora, the divisions within India also affect the diaspora. So there is a negative feedback here, and how that plays out. And this way, I think what Rahul Gandhi says, how he says it, remember in the US, they used to say, no politics beyond water's edge. Yeah. That is, if you cross either Atlantic or the Pacific, you should not criticize your government. You should not have politics taken abroad to other countries. But in India also, I think, unstated, there was a rule like this. Nobody talked about domestic politics when they went abroad. I mean, you had the Bihar chief minister mobilizing all the Biharis and say, or a Vishwa Bengali Divas, or a Vishwa, Odia Divas, or whatever it is. But now I think we're beginning to see, as we come to the election, the resources and the impact that the diaspora has. We're going to see a lot more contestation, I think.
Thank you so much, everyone. Read the piece and we'll talk again next week. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Akash.